Hey, hi, and howdy, sweet friends. Are you ready for Thanksgiving? Because I am bringing you guys a bunch of brand new recipes. If you don't know, I do one of these videos every single year. I will link my previous ones down below. I sought out new recipes for this year. I wanted to make sure everything was definitely, Thanksgiving themed, but I wanted something different than I've done before. So you guys had some new recipes to pick from. I will link or list all the recipes down below in the description box along with my previous videos. Watch them all, make your menu. I promise we've tried all of these and they are winners. So we're going to get started by making homemade rolls. Now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with store-bought bread. I absolutely adore the ones you can buy in the freezer section for the rolls, but there is also something so decadent about some homemade bread. So I'm going to start off with these rolls so they have plenty of time to proof and rise. I've mixed up some warm milk with a little bit of sugar and some yeast. I let it get all nice and foamy and frothy. The recipe called for butter, but I went ahead and added olive oil instead. And then I started adding in my flour. And of course, I ran into my camera in the process because I am clumsy. If nothing else, you can always count on me to be clumsy. So I went ahead and added in half the flour with an egg, got that mixing and incorporated, and now we're going to add in the rest of our flour. For me, bread is a process. I make homemade bread fairly often, and I know that recipes are mere suggestions because depending on your how high you are above sea level and the humidity in the air, the amount of flour you will need or won't need will differ. So just kind of add in slowly and gradually, which is what I did until a nice cohesive dough formed that pulled away from the side of the bowls. I let it knead for about 8 minutes or so and then set it off to the side, covered to rise. Now I've got some sweet potatoes there washed and ready to go, and I put them in my pressure cooker with 1 cup of water, set it for 20 minutes, high pressure, and let it go. We're going to make some homemade sweet potato casserole. It's going to be so good. All right, let's move on to the dressing. We are doing a Southern cornbread style dressing, which is really traditional and really simple. I have got onions and celery here in my pan, and I'm just going to saute them until they are translucent. It usually takes like 8 to 10 minutes. So while they're doing their thing, we're going to get started on the glaze for the ham. I've got 1 can of whole cranberry sauce, and to that I am adding mustard. You can do regular yellow mustard, whole grain mustard, Dijon mustard, any will work. I'm using Dijon because, as you can see, it's almost gone, and I'm trying to use up the last little bit of this. It does call for quite a few tablespoons, so I've added that right in there. And brown sugar. You're going to see so much brown sugar today. I didn't plan it this way, but I think almost every single recipe called for brown sugar. I don't know how it happened, but it did. So you're going to see a ton of that in my kitchen today. That's all we need for the glaze. I popped it in the microwave. I added just a little bit of water, but I popped it in the microwave for about a minute just to kind of, melt the cranberry sauce so it would be easier to incorporate everything. And this is my ham. I like a good Carver ham. You can buy a spiral. You can do any of that. I actually ordered a spiral ham. However, when it arrived, I ordered grocery delivery from Walmart. It was the tiniest ham I have ever seen. It was not nearly enough for a household of 6 people. So I ran out to the store the next day and got one of these Carver hams. I buy these pretty often from Sam's. The price is right. They're easy to cook. I'll throw it in my slow cooker and just cook it to make ham sandwiches for lunches during the week. But I also like it this way. So I have just scored the top of it so that our glaze can kind of sink down. This is my first time trying this one. This is a cranberry glaze, which I just thought was perfect because, cranberries and Thanksgiving are best friends, right? Now that our cranberry stuff is all heated up in the microwave, we've mixed it. I'm going to just kind of pour it over the top of this ham. I did add a little bit of water into the bottom of the pan as well, so nothing burns. There's a lot of sugar in cranberries and that cranberry sauce, and we added sugar to it. It'll burn and get nasty on the bottom of the pan, but the water is going to kind of prevent that from happening. So we're just going to cover this and bake it. Now, I think the general rule is somewhere along the lines of 10 to 15 minutes per pound. This is not a huge ham because it's just for 6 people and I'm not looking to eat it for 7 days. So it's, I think it was like a 3 or 4 pound ham. So I just popped that into my oven and I did it for about 45 minutes and I'll show you what it looks like in a minute. I did check back in with our onions and celery and they are nice and soft. So I added in a little bit more a little bit of butter. And I'm going to go ahead and take a minute to season this as well. I'm using dried spices. So it really is nice to throw them into a skillet like this and toast them for a minute because it just kind of brings them back to life. I'm adding in a bunch of sage because, it's Thanksgiving and I feel like sage is just one of those things that is in all the things at Thanksgiving. I'm also adding in curry powder. This is not in the recipe. My mom always adds in curry powder when she makes homemade dressing. and it's amazing. It kind of mimics almost a carrot flavor, like a little hint of sweetness. It's different, but it's so, so good. So I went ahead and threw some in because I knew my husband would love it. Now, the recipe that I'm following, which is linked below, called for a can of cream of something soup. I usually just make my own, and I'm out of my mix, so I'm kind of just winging it and throwing it together. I'm just adding a little bit of flour in there. We're going to make a roux. So I've already got the butter and I've got the veggies and the seasonings. We add the flour. We toast it for just a minute to kind of cook out the flour taste. And then I'm going to be adding in a little bit of bouillon. We're going to, in total, probably add in about 2 cups of liquid. My bouillon is 1 teaspoon per cup of liquid. So I went ahead and put in about 2 teaspoons and let that toast as well, because that, again, it's another dried spice and it just brings it back to life. Went ahead and mixed that around, and then we're going to go ahead and add in our liquids once that's had a minute to come together. Now, I'm going to add in milk right now, and I'm going to add in water later. I'm going to use the milk to make the cream of soup mix that we're doing here, so I'm adding in roughly just a little bit over a cup. And then here later, once we're mixing up the actual dressing, I'm going to add in water. That's why I added in 2 teaspoons of my bouillon, because in the end, I'm going to use about 2 teaspoons of liquid. Now, I didn't salt anything because I'm using bouillon powder, which is so salty. So if you are using like store-bought stock or broth or something, you may need to add some salt to yours. Make sure you're tasting as you go. Thanksgiving is one of those times where you really have to taste. So here is some cornbread. You can buy it pre-made in your bakery. I just use 2 packets of the mix that's easy at the store. It's like 50 or 60 cents. You add a little bit of milk and a little bit of eggs. I did 2 packets, baked it up in the morning, and just let it sit on the stovetop uncovered so it dries out a little bit. You want your cornbread to be nice and dry. And I just put on a glove and I went to town crumbling it. It's one of the easiest, most fun parts of Thanksgiving cooking. You just demolish that cornbread. As you can see, I just kind of pan back over to show you our cream of soup mix over here has thickened up beautifully. It's absolute perfect texture. So I went ahead and removed it from the pan because I wasn't at that point, I wasn't exactly certain I was going to need that much liquid. You always can add more, but you can't take liquid back out. I've now added my cornbread right on into that skillet, and looking at it, I'm thinking I probably do need all of my cream of soup mix, but just to be safe, I added in half, and then I definitely did need to add in the other half. Again, this is 2 packets of cornbread mix. It filled a 9x13 pan, and then I've got my a little bit over a cup of milk that I added in there to make our cream of soup, and you'll see me add some water in a minute. I added in a total of 1 cup of water. What you want is for this to be almost dough-like, because we're going to bake it again and it's going to dry out. So we want it to be wetter than you think it should, because if it's too dry now, it's going to be way too dry after we cook it and some of the liquid evaporates out. We want it to come together kind of like a dough, hold its texture and consistency, and form a casserole. So it's definitely going to look way too wet, but just trust the process. Like I said, I added in about a cup of water. If you want yours to be a little creamier, I am taste testing there. If you want it to be a little bit creamier, you could add in milk in place of water, and that is fine. It does kind of make it creamier, but I just always do chicken broth, or in this case, bouillon with water. So I'm going to spray my pan. I am using aluminum pans today because I'm in the kitchen cooking all day, and I didn't want to be in here doing dishes all day. You don't see these very often in my kitchen, but I do use them for special occasions when I'm cooking a ton of food for the holidays. Now, dressing will stick. Make sure you grease that pan. I always make sure I get in those corners and the grooves and stuff. And now we're just going to transfer all of it right on into this pan. This is, I think it's a 9x13. It was the perfect size. Now, of course, you can double this recipe. If you are going to a huge family Thanksgiving, definitely double it. But for my family, like I said, there's 6 people in my house, and we'll just eat this for probably 2 days or so. This was perfect. I'm just going to smooth it out, and you can see it's almost a dough-like texture. That's exactly what we want. I'm going to smooth it out evenly into one solid layer across this pan, and then you bake it 350 degrees. I bake mine covered, and then like the last 10 minutes, I take the cover off so it can kind of brown a little bit, and it gets all nice and pretty. If you don't want it to be browned, you don't have to. That's fine. But that's just what I do. And typically I will bake this for a total of 30 to 40 minutes. If I'm putting other stuff in the oven with it, it's usually 40. If it goes in on its own, 30 minutes is good. Okay, so when it comes to cranberry sauce, I have made homemade cranberry sauce on my channel a number of times in a number of ways. Today we're going to make something I found that sounded amazing, and let me tell you it was. It is, I think it's called cranberry apple chutney. I have linked the recipe down below for y'all, and I'm going to tell you, this is fabulous. I don't just want this at Thanksgiving. I want this year-round on toast. I want to mix it into some oatmeal. This stuff was so good. So I diced up 2 small apples, and then I threw in a package of cranberries, fresh cranberries. Mine are frozen. I buy them and then throw them in my freezer so I can bake with them throughout the year and stuff. These are from last year. I just put them in air sealing bags. I have a vacuum sealer, and they stay good. They're really awesome. So I threw those in, and then I threw in about a cup of raisins, and I added in a little bit of water. The recipe also calls for apple cider vinegar and brown sugar. Oh, this is so good. Just let it simmer so everything cooks. Just a quick peek at those sweet potatoes. They are done in the pressure cooker. As you can see, they're super hot, but we need to remove the skins. It's much easier to do now than to try to peel these guys. Sweet potatoes I often find are a little challenging to work with. I prefer just pulling the skins off. Normally I would let them cool, but I'm trying to get everything done in the kitchen now because it is later in the day. So I've decided we're just gonna, run the risk of burning the fingers. We're getting the skin off, but you can see, it pulls right off. It's not hard to do. It's easier to do it this way. I'm going to peel all of those just like that. And now that our Ninja Foodie's empty, we're going to throw in some carrots. We're going to do a slow cooker glazed carrot meal or dish. So I've got carrots. I've got 2 of the small packages of baby carrots. You could dice up carrots if that's what you want. Whatever you have on hand, it just needs to be fresh carrots. We're going to throw them in there with some butter and some spices. I believe the recipe only calls for cinnamon and allspice, but I also added in some cloves because cloves are amazing. Then I put in a little bit of maple syrup and some brown sugar. We're going to give that a stir, get everything mixed around, and then just cook this in your slow cooker. I will link that recipe down below as well. Now back to the sweet potatoes. I did let them cool a little bit because we've got to mix some eggs in here. They're still warm, but not as hot as they were. I threw in a couple of tablespoons of butter. I kind of mixed it around so it would get down in those hot potatoes and melt a little bit. And now I've got 2 eggs and I've got some milk. Now I'm using coconut milk, which by the way, I think was a fabulous addition to this because that sweet coconutty flavor is beautiful, but you can use whatever kind of milk you drink, whether it's dairy or almond or soy, whatever you have. I'm also adding in some brown sugar to those sweet potatoes. I did go ahead and mix my milk and eggs together, and we're going to season this with cinnamon, cloves, and allspice. Again, I don't think cloves were listed, but I opted to add them in because I think cloves are beautiful. They smell amazing. They're very strong, so a little goes a long way, but I absolutely adore the flavor. So good. This, I think, was probably the favorite dish of this Thanksgiving feast, by the way. My family loved it, and you're going to see in a minute, we're going to add a topping to it that just takes it over the top. Now, I went ahead and mixed all of the spices and stuff into the potatoes and mashed them with a fork because we want them, like pureed kind of. And now that that's done, we're going to add in our egg milk mixture. This is what's going to hold this together once it bakes. Kind of picture like pumpkin pie or sweet potato pie. Essentially, that's kind of what this is like. So we went ahead and got that all mixed together. I'm going to spray, again, another 9x13 aluminum pan, and we're going to spread this across the bottom of that dish. Nice, even, flat layer, and then set it off to the side for a minute. We're going to work on the topping. This topping, it was so incredible. Really, it put it so far over the top. This was amazing. If you don't know, I'm not opposed to the traditional marshmallow-topped yams, but I'm not a huge fan of marshmallow. So this one really got me because I loved it. So I've melted some butter, and to that I'm adding in some brown sugar. We're going to make a crumble topping for that. Now, the original recipe calls for pecans. I typically will sub walnuts for pecans. 1, pecans are more expensive, and 2, they kind of leave a weird bitter taste, weird feeling in my mouth. So usually I will just opt for walnuts. However, today I had some sliced almonds, and I was like, you know what? I don't use these enough, so we're using them. I just subbed those right on in there, and they were perfect for this dish. Let me tell you, absolutely perfect. The right kind of crunch, the right kind of texture, just so delicious. Now, I did salt this a little bit. You always want to salt anything sweet that you're making because it just kind of makes the flavor pop. But I mixed all of that together so that it was fully incorporated. And now we're going to make this an official crumble by adding in flour. Oh, this was so magical. I got to tell you, I need to make more things with crumbles like this on top because this had me. I loved it so much. I did not add any spices in here. I would not be opposed to adding cinnamon in there though. When you're making it at home, if you want to think about that, you might want to do that. I think cinnamon in this crumble topping might have really just pushed it even further over the edge. I did add more flour than what the recipe called for because it was not quite crumbly. But once I did that, I just used my hand so I could evenly sprinkle this and break it up over the top of those sweet potatoes. Again, this is like a lot of sweet potato. However, like I said, was the favorite dish, I think, of this Thanksgiving feast. So it didn't last long in my house, honestly. It just didn't. All right, let's check in on that ham. Look at that. Oh, she's beautiful and she smelled amazing. I didn't know I was going to love putting cranberries on a ham so much, but I really, really do. So I did not pour all of the glaze on there before. I only put about a third of it on there. So now I'm putting another third of it on there. And we're going to pop it back in for like another 10 minutes with no foil on top just to really set that glaze. All right, back to our dough that we made very first thing. It has proofed, it has risen, it has done its thing. I put some flour on my counter. I put some flour on my hands because it was a bit of a sticky dough. I'm going to knead it for just a couple of minutes just to kind of work with it, bring it back to life, that sort of thing. And then we're going to roll this into rolls. I like to use a bench scraper to kind of chop up my dough. I cut it in half and then I equally divide each half into however many pieces I'm going for. It's the easiest way to me. Now, it's not exact. If you want these to be the same size, you're going to need to pull out a kitchen scale. Sometimes I can eyeball it and be like, whoa, that one's way too big, and take some off like you just saw me do. But either way, it'll be okay. They're close enough in size that they're going to bake and it's going to be fine. So what I'm doing there is I kind of like pull the dough so that the ball is pretty tight on top. And then I'll kind of pinch it closed and then roll it on the counter to seal the bottom of it. I just do that with every one of these. And as you can see, they're mostly pretty similar in shape and size, which is what we're going for. I mean, they're like handmade, y'all. Like you can see it's handmade. I put them all into another aluminum foil pan. Thank goodness H-E-B had them on sale because I'm blowing through them on this Thanksgiving feast. And then I'm going to top mine with melted butter. Now, if you want some nice brown rolls, you really should top them with an egg milk mixture. That's going to give you that beautiful golden brown topping. These came out looking more biscuity. They weren't quite as dark as like a regular roll would be, but the flavor was on point. They were so good. Really did enjoy these quite a bit. I, again, am a huge fan of any kind of homemade bread. Carbs are my friend. I love them, and I love the smell of bread baking in my home too. It really is just a nice smell. Just feels so warm and inviting. But I put just a couple of tablespoons spread over the top, butter there, popped them in the oven and let them, or no, sorry, I did not. I let them rise one more time, then put them in the oven. Okay, now we're going to make dessert. I've shown pumpkin pie and stuff before, but I came across a pecan dump cake, and this is the stuff dreams are made of, okay? So good. So I started off with a couple of eggs there, scrambled them up all nice, and then we're going to add some, guess what, brown sugar, because there's brown sugar in everything today. Lots of brown sugar. We're going to add some there. This is an 1/8 cup for those of you that are probably panicking, thinking, dear Lord, how much brown sugar has this woman dumped in here? Well, that's an 1/8 of a cup measure, and it did call for an exorbitant amount of brown sugar, but probably not as much as you think. I did actually kind of go just a little shy on it because I was looking at it going, my gosh, that's so much sugar. I'm going to go ahead and mix the eggs and the brown sugar together and just kind of make sure that I work out any lumps or clumps from my brown sugar. It was actually not too lumpy and clumpy today. Sometimes I buy bags at the store. They have a lot of clumps. This one, it was a good one. Now we're going to add in some melted butter because we stopped counting calories hours ago, right? What is that saying? Holiday calories don't count. I think that's what they say. It's so true. Live by that. Believe it. I promise. It's okay. We're going to go ahead and mix this really, really well. And it kind of forms this beautiful, silky, caramel-looking, smelling stuff that I would love to taste, but I know there's raw egg in there. Then the recipe called for dark corn syrup, which I knew going into this I didn't have, but I had a ton of light corn syrup, and I just felt like it's going to be fine, and it was. So I subbed that in place of dark corn syrup. I did add just a little extra in there because I could tell mine stuck. And this is my homemade vanilla. I know it looks like I'm adding booze in there, and technically I am. I like to use spiced rum and then put like 6 vanilla beans in there and let it set for 3 to 6 months, and you've got some really amazing vanilla. I added that in there, and I'm going to tell you, especially for a dish like this, that really did something nice in there. It really, really did. My father-in-law makes a pecan pie that's got like rum or bourbon or something in it, and it's so amazing. And this kind of had a little bit of that flavor, so I was real happy about that. Now, yet again, for this pecan dump cake, we're using walnuts because, again, I still just don't love pecans. I still don't buy them, and they still kind of taste weird in my mouth. So walnuts it is. I love a good walnut. I even like the texture of them better. Mix those right on in there, and then we're going to pour this into another greased pan. And yes, it's another aluminum pan. We're going to pour this all into the bottom, and we're going to spread it around nice and evenly. We want to make sure the nuts especially are in a pretty even layer. So once this all comes together, you know, there's a good amount of nuts in each bite. Now, here's our magic weapon, white cake mix, just the Walmart brand. You don't have to buy anything fancy. You can if you want to, but just the Walmart brand is fine. And even that costs more than $1 now, which is kind of disappointing. We're going to just evenly spread this over the top. You can see I'm being pretty careful with it, trying to make it all nice and even. Spread it out with my fingers if I had any, you know, peaks or valleys. And then we've got some melted butter. Oh, this stuff is magical. If you've ever made a dump cake before, you're familiar with this process. You put your pie filling basically on the bottom, your dry cake mix on top, and a ton of butter on top of that. So that's what we're doing now. And I poured very carefully to make it all nice and even. And then we're going to top this with some more nuts, more walnuts for me. And then we'll add some water to this. And that's all she wrote. Now, I'm going to tell you, you're looking at this thinking that this fits well in the pan because that's what I was thinking. But I'm going to tell you it didn't. It bubbled and boiled over. Thank goodness I had a sheet tray underneath it, because can you imagine trying to scrape all that burned sugar out of the bottom? So I just had to scrape it off of my baking sheet. But pop that in the oven, let it do its thing. You're going to get, it's a messy looking cobbler, but it's phenomenal. All right, back to our apple, raisin, cranberry chutney. It has been simmering this whole time, and you don't have to simmer it as long. You might not want yours quite as dry as I did. I wanted mine dry. I didn't want it saucy. Oh, that stuff is so good. I could just eat it with a spoon. Okay, let's make some honey butter skillet corn. This is the easiest dish of the day. We've got some butter and we've got just a tiny bit of cream cheese. You don't need a whole lot. And to that, we're going to add some honey. And of course, you want to throw in a little salt and pepper. You'll see me do that here in just a minute. We're just kind of letting the butter and the cream cheese warm up and melt together. And then we're going to add in corn. The recipe called for frozen corn. I'll link it down below. I'm using canned corn. I prefer canned corn. I always have it on hand because my kids like corn. But if you want to use frozen, that's fine too. Is it just me, or sometimes do you find like there's some little hard bits in the frozen corn? Sometimes I find that, and it's less appealing to me. So this is one of the few veggies I would say canned is the winner for me. Anyway, like I said, season it with some salt and pepper and just kind of cook this until your cream cheese fully incorporates and melts. And that's all she wrote. It is so easy. It is so simple. Now, I think next time I make this, I might put just a dash of onion powder in there for just something different. But overall, this was also a hit. Kids and adults both liked this one so much. There's that ham, y'all. It is done. Oh, she was so good. She smelled amazing too. My house smelled so ridiculously good. Oh my goodness. So I just kind of gave you a full-on view of what she looks like. I just cut these in half and then slice them nice and thinly. I like thin slices because we will most definitely be making some sandwiches out of these. And if you don't know, those rolls we made are perfect little slider-sized sandwich buns. So this works out quite nicely. Just top it with some of that cranberry apple chutney and some of this ham right here. Oh, so, so good. Anyway, like I said, easy to slice. This was tender and juicy. Normally, I will do my hams in a slow cooker. I haven't done a ham in an oven in a long time, but this came out beautifully. I love this recipe, and I will, again, link that down below as well, because it is a winner for sure. And as you can see, this is a lot of ham. It doesn't look like the biggest ham in the world, but this definitely comes out to be quite a bit of ham. And yes, I am taste testing as we go. I love a good ham. I really, really do. It just always hits the spot. And now let's take a peek at everything we've got. There's that ham. It is a lot of ham, and we had plenty left over for sandwiches. There's our dressing after she cooks. Oh, so good. I love that dressing so much. That curry powder, don't sleep on it. It's a winner. Our cranberry apple chutney, which was amazing. I love this stuff. That sweet potato casserole was definitely a favorite. It didn't last long. Everybody loved it. Our glazed carrots, I'll tell you what, I'm not a fan of carrots, not my favorite vegetable, but those are pretty darn good. Honey butter skillet corn, make more than I did because that went so fast. Those homemade rolls, which I said look like biscuits. And there's that dump cake. Like I said, she ain't pretty, y'all. But that flavor was on point. This whole meal was so good. And I love Thanksgiving food. It's always so delicious. My whole family does. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for sticking around. Drop me a comment below to let me know what you think. I have linked everything below for y'all so you can make it at home as well. And check out my videos from the last couple of years too. I hope y'all are having a wonderful weekend. And I hope you have a fantastic week. I'll see you guys soon.